Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2:30 on Monday, May 21st, 2018, and this is a regular meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Elections. We have a quorum present. We're meeting at the Board of Elections in Gaithersburg, Maryland, so we'll begin the meeting. First item is the approval of the minutes from the April 11th, 2018 conference call. Do we have a motion?
I move we accept the minute as amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we're going to approve the minutes from April 16th, 2018 board meeting. Let's do that. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the minute as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? March 19th, 2018 board meeting.
Executive
No.
session.
Executive session.
Executive.
March 19th, 2018 executive session meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the minute.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? April 16th, 2018 executive session meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move
Second? Is there a second?
Second that.
16.
I know he's looking at me.
I'm looking at it.
Did we
We have a
see
second
these?
already.
We have a second.
Where did we receive these?
These were received in the email with all their minutes, with the April
They
11th. and
were, they
April
were with
16th.
all the others. Okay,
Yeah.
because it was
wasn't-
getting
it
late.
wasn't
If there were amendments.
Yeah.
There were some
Second?
amendments, but
Any
as you
discussion?
said, as amended.
As amended.
Any
Okay.
discussion?
As amended.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one opposed? That's it, I think, right, Lisa?
Yes, that's it.
What about
It was a March 16th
the
executive session?
April 11th conference call?
He did
That
that.
was the first one?
They did it.
We did that. Okay. So we're gonna have an executive session after the meeting. I don't think there's any other additions. Is there?
No.
Yeah,
Mr. Masters.
Yeah, Mr. Masterson is on his way. He had a little car issue on the highway,
dear.
we're told.
And just so it's clear, Mr. President, the executive session is going to be for personnel and a confidential matter request.
Correct. So when Mr. Masterson gets here, we'll break in and let him make his presentation. Okay, do we have any public comments, Lisa?
No one asked to speak in advance, and no one here today would like to address the board.
Okay. Okay, Margaret, Election Director report.
Okay, first of all, we have some personnel that needs to be honored for service. Our
Oh,
first individual is Allison McLaughlin. Allison is receiving a 5-year service award.
all right.
Boy, time flies, doesn't it? Doesn't seem like 5 years.
Good girl.
Congratulations.
Next person is Deborah Hamer. She's receiving a service award for 10 great years of service.
Okay. Congratulations.
The next individual is Chris Zizek
All right.
for 10 years of service.
Congratulations.
Next is our recruiter trainer coordinator, Leslie Woods, for 10 years of service.
Congratulations.
And to the Grand Dame, Bobby Payne, 20 years of service.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Bobby.
Watch that cord, Bobby.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Do the safe work problem. Okay, I'm going to switch it over now to Lisa to give us an update on where we're at with personnel.
So where we are at with personnel, we have onboarded about 90% of our temporary staff at this point, with a few more groups coming in over the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Margie, do you want to present on the budget?
Okay. The budget spreadsheet was sent to everyone in advance. Just a couple notes on that. As of the printing of the spreadsheet, we were 10 months through the fiscal year, spent 45.5% of our budget with 54.5% remaining. One line I would draw your attention to is at the top of page 2, line 63100, which is outside printing and copying. You'll note that we are definitely over budget on that line item. That is due to the fact that this year, for the first time, the state required us to pay 100% of the cost for the ballots that are used for election judge training. And so that was nowhere on our radar screen to have budgeted. And we're not sure whether that's going to be a continuing, ongoing thing that we'll need to build into the budget or not. But that's what has caused that line item to be in such a deficit at this point.
Is that the entire number, or does it account for other things too?
No, that's the entire number.
It's for the printing. Did you say ballots to use for training? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a lot of ballots.
Yeah.
That is a lot of ballots. Are we able to handle that additional amount in there?
It's too early.
Sure. We are, and that's going to be a little bit further down, but I can jump to it now. The Office of Management and Budget is projecting a deficit for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
I think we were all anticipating it. The budget, they're projecting $156,454 in deficit. The majority of that being in operating, with just a tiny bit in personnel due to overtime expenses. As we all know, we're waiting to hear from the state how we're going to be dealing with the unfortunate death of a candidate and what additional expenses that will cause us to go even further into deficit. We don't know. OMB is aware that is, we're waiting to hear how that could possibly affect us.
I'm sure they will send us a bill, yes.
Yes, I'm sure they will.
Well, it sounds like they sent us this bill just unilaterally for the training.
For the ballots, yeah, that bill was actually sent from the printer to us directly. That did not go through the State Board of Elections.
And you checked with the state to make sure that was correct?
Yes, I did.
They didn't have the wrong address?
No, sorry, we had to do that.
So is the 50-50 split in law or just tradition?
50-50 split is in law.
Yes.
Do we make, I'm glad you asked that question.
Thank you.
How do we make the arrangements with the state or vice versa? How do they make? Is it all law? Is it arrangement? Is it contract? Is it, you're going to pay that, we're going to pay this one day at lunch? How does it work?
Well, let me respond to, overall it's 50-50. But what the state did in this particular instance was advise us that we were to use the mock election ballots that were given to us for the January testing, which amounts to a couple hundred ballots. That's not even realistic for us. I mean, we have literally hundreds of classes in which individuals are using ballots, marking them, sending them through the scanner. They have to use the ballot marking device to learn how to, set it up, show somebody how to vote. So a couple hundred ballots for preparing for 3,000 plus individuals is not realistic. So when I contacted the state, they said, well, if you want more ballots that exceeds the polling place testing ballot, you have to pay for them yourself.
How many do you think we bought with that money?
About 67,000.
Wow, 67,000 ballots?
I think that was the amount.
I'd have to pull the invoice. I didn't.
67,000 ballots cost, where am I? $14,000.
It's special paper the paper that we must use with the voting system and the ballot marking device is very specific types of paper. You can't just use any old paper.
And do you think they were basing that
If you recall, they used a ballot paper that met the SNS specification in last November of 2016, and we all remember how that went. We were constantly redoing and rescanning ballots.
This paper's a heavier grade or something?
Yes, it's specific to the product.
So Margaret, how
To
did they settle on
minimize
the,
counterfeiting.
how did they settle on the 300? They just figured that most counties aren't going to have the same kind of level of training that we do
I don't
because
know
they're
how
smaller.
I have no idea what they think.
Would it be worth trying to find out how they do this, or not worth trying to find out how they, is it arbitrary, or is it, there's a scientific percentage or some such thing?
There is a percentage, it's based on our population.
For the majority of what we are billed by the state, the 50-50 split that is invoiced to us every quarter, right now it's just over 17% is what we have to pay. So we pay 17% of the 50% that's billed to all the counties. But this was handled differently because this was a specific thing for Montgomery County, and Margaret identified, or somebody identified, I presume it was Margaret, identified how many ballots we needed, and then we were billed directly by the company for those ballots.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Margie, I had a couple other questions when you're finished.
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
I was looking at bulk mail and interoffice mail, close to the number that you first talked about. It looks like we're way over on that. Can you tell us what the deal is with those two?
Interoffice mail is a charge. It's a charge back from the county for the cost of their employees to come up here to pick up mail for us once a day. It has historically been in the $750 range. I don't know, and of course when it's a chargeback, it's nothing that I really have control over. It's just taken out of the budget. I would certainly be happy to look into that and see if I can get a more definitive answer for you for next time.
Do you expect that to keep going up, or is that going to level off or stay where it is?
That should be pretty much it for the year. There may be one additional charge, but typically they bill that so that by the time ONB does its third quarter analysis, they have all of that money billed. So I would not expect it to go any higher, but I'll certainly look into that and try to get some information for you. In terms of the line 63200, what I would say is this is something that I go back and forth with the print shop on and the mailroom. If you look down a few lines further down at 63300, that is the line that I have been told is charged for all postage. You'll notice we haven't been charged a dime this fiscal year.
Right.
And yet up above at 63200, the line in question, that is the line that I have been told is used for services, not postage. And by services, I mean collating, folding, tabbing, spraying addresses on, that type of thing.
And that's 3 times more than it is.
But because we have not been charged anything on the postage line, it is my feeling, and I have not called to question it, it's my very strong belief that they're just billing everything to us under that one line. So what I've been going with in my mind is as long as that line where we have been billed $90,000, if it doesn't exceed $120,000, then we're on budget because you've got the $90,000 and the $30,000 built in there.
36.
But again, I'm happy to try to get a definitive answer from the mailroom if you'd like.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Good. I just it makes me a little nervous when I see a number like that, but I didn't notice the 63,300. And if they continue not to bill us for that, then
we should be okay.
That's the big if.
Yeah. So I'll be happy to check into those two things for you. Lisa and I have been working together to try to encumber funds for as many of our large ticket items as we can for the end of the fiscal year. Since ONB is projecting a deficit, we want to make sure that we've got funds encumbered while there are still funds to encumber. And so we've been working with staff to identify things that most people don't even think about, like the light towers that show up in the parking lot on election night, the tents to protect the staff and the equipment as it's coming in, those kinds of things that are large in cost and are a specific cost that we can encumber. We've been working to get those done, and I'd say we're probably 3/4 of the way doing that, and we've also processed most of the advertising cost payments because of that reason, and we've also already processed we're done at this point with the polling place rental fees They're not going to be sent out until after the election, but they've already been processed and the money taken out of our budget, so it's already taken care of. So we've been trying to work proactively on that so that we don't run into a problem at the end of the year. Any other questions on the FY18? Okay, just real brief and really happy. Just want to repeat the good news I sent everybody on May 17th. We did receive word that the county council did give us an additional $20,000 for advertising off of the reconciliation list. That brings the total for the advertising line item to $70,000 for FY19. I have been working and getting some preliminary estimates for future discussion with the advertising committee from one of the major radio stations, and also including discussion on digital advertising as well with a couple of people. So I'm working on trying to get that so that when we're ready to have the advertising committee meeting, I'll have some additional information. And certainly if either of the members of the committee you want to send me an email with certain specific things you want me to look into in advance of that type of a meeting, I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I'll send it to you, but part of what I would want to look at is not just expanding by one of the major radio stations, but there's a number of radio
Absolutely.
stations that we want to reach out to in addition to the digital.
Absolutely, yeah. So,
Thank you.
okay. That was all I had for the budget pieces, unless there's any questions from the board members.
Thank you, Margie.
Okay, Jessica, voter registration.
So we should have got a little dashboard sheet that shows all the registrations down here.
Okay.
Which will pass around. So we're at about 647,262 active registrants. We have 81,445 inactive registrants. So we've kind of just been trending along. And then we have issued to date 3,785 absentee ballots. So we're trending a little bit behind where we were in 2014 at this point. But we're just now getting full swing out into the nursing homes. And also with the absentee applications going out in the sample ballot, we expect that we'll start to see those numbers pick up a little bit over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Repeat the number for the. Did you say there were the number of absentee ballots issued to date? Is that what you said?
3,785.
They've been mailed out?
No.
Oh, they've been
We've received the application.
Request.
And the state is transmitting them twice a week to the vendor mail. I think a majority of those have gone out, and we actually have started to get a couple back. I think we've got 2 back by mail so far.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just UCalva votes.
Correct.
It's whoever's requested early.
The first domestic mailing, I think, went out, was actually mailed on Friday, is what I believe went out. So anybody who had requested prior to Tuesday of last week was included. So anything that's happened since then domestically will be being pulled tomorrow.
And this is being done by Runback?
No,
it's a new vendor.
Yes, and
Yes, it is.
Okay.
yeah, they're getting
And we have several mailings that go out, like in various places? Is
That's
that-
correct.
Yeah.
So they're mailing the military overseas more frequently just because of the transit time to get them overseas, and they're pulling the domestic ballots and mailing them twice a week, and then I think it's next week they shift into a schedule of starting to do it on a daily basis, polling, and then they'll mail the next day.
Oh, okay, so it'll just keep rolling.
Yep, they'll just keep rolling through. Keep spinning.
Would it be possible
Okay.
to get the dashboard electronically in the future?
That's a scanning question, it's not much currently in the room. but-
We'll scan it and send it to you.
Yeah.
Usually it's not prepared in advance. We have those numbers are updated as of this morning.
Okay. Again, but if we were to get it on Friday, get it.
We can scan it and
Every
send it.
Friday?
Yeah.
We can scan it and send it to you.
Jessica, about how many active voters were there last month? What's the increase? Or I guess it's an increase.
So, let's see, 1 month ago, on April 25th, we were at 645,454 active. Now, we also have a fair number of people in any given election year who are requesting to have their registration canceled. We're not doing cancellation process. The voters are telling us they moved.
Oh.
They're participating in primaries in other states, so that spurs people to cancel. So that's not a fair representation of the number of voters added versus those that,
It's a net.
right.
Well, for those people who tell us that they want to cancel, but you say don't cancel them during this time?
We don't do it through a list maintenance process.
Are their names taken off?
If they request it, yes.
Meaning that they're not going to show up in the poll book.
That's correct. Yeah, if somebody requests to be canceled, we cancel on the same day.
A follow-up for Jessica, for a follow-up to Jessica's remarks related to absentee. The SBE sent me an email at 2:18 today notifying me that the absentee poll for voters who've requested a mail ballot or an online ballot delivery is going to be halted, and they are going to finish their work with the Assistant Attorney General to finalize the notice regarding the vacancy created by the Camerons and the placement of Valerie Urban at the top of the ticket. And so as soon as they get that finalized, then they'll resume pulling the absentee files.
So there is something being constructed here, being written to.
Yes.
Are we going to be going over that?
They're working on a notice.
Are you going to be talking about that?
Okay.
Or is this it?
Okay.
You know what we're going to do, Margaret? Let's
Okay.
let's pause because Mr. Masterson is here. After enduring our, was it 495 car accident?
It was 495.
Oh,
Not you. He wasn't in the accident.
No, I was not. Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to our traffic.
Allison, would you like to do an introduction? Matt, you can start right here.
Matt Masterson. He is the Senior Cybersecurity Advisor for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Most of you will probably, okay, good, you guys share
Pat
that.
Masterson? That was always my nickname in any sport I played, so
Most of
absolutely.
you probably recognize Matt because he spoke at the Biennial Conference last year, although he was wearing a different hat then. He was the chair of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission at the time. And so now just March?
March,
Matt
yep.
jumped over to the Department of Homeland Security. I was actually at an election officials conference when the word came out that Matt was going over to Homeland Security, and there were cheers. Matt is well known, well liked. Just brief bio. Once upon a time, Matt was actually a staff guy at the Election Assistance Commission who managed the EAC's laboratory accreditation program and laid the foundation for a lot of the work that's going on now in updating the voting system standards. And then he went to Ohio and was the Chief Information Officer for the Ohio Secretary of State before then Speaker Boehner tapped him to serve on the EAC. Once at the EAC then, ended up moving on just a few months ago to the Department of Homeland Security. And he is a Montgomery County voter.
I am.
Since
I am.
Yay.
That's right.
Matt, thanks for coming. We really
No,
appreciate
I
it.
really appreciate you all having me. I appreciate the invite. I'm always happy to come and talk with local election officials who are the front lines to protecting our democracy. So I wanted to start, I'll talk about the resources, but pass around our resource guide. Hopefully I brought enough, but if not, feel free to share. It's available on our website as well, so all that information is available. That's a guide to all of the free services that we're offering to state and local election offices, and I'll kind of talk through some of that for you all. And for those of you that saw my presentation at the meeting earlier this year, some of these slides are the same, but with the DHS focus. And Allison, thank you for the kind introduction. My goal here is I'll give you a primer on kind of the work we're doing at DHS, the services we're providing you all, and then I'd love to discuss with you any questions you have, any follow-up and information. I will say Montgomery County's already engaged with us. We'll be out here next week, right, for a physical Thursday this week for a facilities audit, which is awesome. We love providing those types of services. So just to get started, this is a headline from 2016, but could be a headline from 2017 or 2018. The conversation around the security of election systems, as you all know better than I, has continued and will continue. The reality is election systems are viewed as a target of sophisticated cyber actors, whether it be nation states or criminal hackers or whatnot, and that puts you all, as I said, on the front lines of protecting democracy. And so the challenge for you all is to recognize that in this space you're on the front lines, you're protecting these systems, but you also are resource limited, as I'm sure you all confront every day, and also time limited, right? For every election process, the one asset you can't get more of is time. You're always one day closer to another election, 1 hour closer. And so trying to balance and make good decisions about risk mitigation is your ultimate challenge, because you can't possibly secure everything perfectly. There's no such thing as perfectly secure. Just as an example, this comes from the North Carolina Elections Board in 2017. This was their website. This is a simple website defacing attack where their website was attacked by ISIS and defaced. And so the challenge for all of us is North Carolina did a very good job responding, getting the website back up and correct. But if something like this were to occur in the midst of an election or just before Election Day, how prepared are we to respond? How prepared are we to respond technically? How prepared are we to respond in a communications format to reassure our voters that the process is secure, that you've got everything under control? Yes, sir.
Just a question. At the top it says election infrastructure as a target, but it looks like it's a newspaper site that's been attacked here?
No, this is a newspaper article showing the screenshot from the North Carolina Board of Elections website.
So,
from
it was an attack
2017.
on the North Carolina?
Correct. It was an ISIS targeted attack on, in this case, the North Carolina Board of Elections website.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
And you're not alone. How many are familiar with the Atlanta ransomware attack or read about the Atlanta ransomware attack? Yeah. Big deal, right? City of Atlanta was attacked with ransomware, which means that the data in all of their systems across the entire city was locked away from them. They did not have access to it, and it shut down the city for about 7 to 8 days, depending on the service that was being offered, costing millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to the city of Atlanta. And so this isn't just a public confidence question. This isn't just a question around the security and integrity of the process, but also very much a financial challenge. I had a friend in Ohio, Keith Cunningham, who used to say that if you think a good election is expensive, you should see a bad one. And the challenge for us is what is the cost of an attack like this, both monetarily and on the confidence of the process, because local governments are being targeted. Local government, not just elections, local government as a whole are being targeted by sophisticated cyber actors. And so how prepared are you here in Montgomery County and the election officials across the country to respond should their data be taken away and locked away and encrypted such that you can rebuild, have your backups in place? Have you tested your backups? Do you have a plan to respond? You all are in good company, or at least distinguished company, as members of what is now the nation's critical infrastructure. You're now part of the nuclear facility in the same company as nuclear or electrical, the water facilities, IT infrastructure, banking. You're one of 18 assets that are critical to national security and functioning. And that is part of the Department of Homeland Security's designation, making you part of critical infrastructure. And so that's a recognition, I think, of something that election officials certainly have known for as long as they've been administering elections, how critical you all and your functioning is to America and what we do here as a country. So the challenge for all of us, and I use this slide kind of tongue-in-cheek, the challenge for all of us is to anticipate the next headline, the next challenge, because the reality is, even if Montgomery County isn't impacted, isn't targeted, you all are going to be asked about what the next headline is. You all are going to be asked about how prepared you are for a ransomware attack, or if your election night reporting system is secure because another county or state may have had an incident. And so anticipating and managing that risk is the challenge for all of us, and how to manage that risk. I also like this because it's actually not the guy with the grasshopper, but the fed up fatties kill aerobics instructor. It's at least relatable for me. So the challenge for all of us, federal, state, and local, is to identify those things that matter most. What is the data that you hold, the systems that are dearest to you and most important? Those things that you control. Much is outside of your control. For election officials, that's always a hard thing to accept. Election officials, in a very positive way, tend to be control freaks. But understanding what is within your control, and then that mesh point between those things that matter and those things that you can control. Because the reality is, elections are an incredibly under-resourced area, and so you cannot possibly devote enough time and enough money in the time between elections in preparation to secure everything perfectly, because there is no such thing as perfect security. And those who have the money, places like Equifax, can't protect their systems that well enough, right? And so it's not just a matter of protection, it's also a matter of detection and recovery. How prepared are you to detect something that happens and recover from what that incident may be? And the good news is election officials tend to be incredible contingency planners, and preparation like that comes naturally to them. And so we have found at the department, in my work at the EAC as well, that the contingency planning portion of this is something election officials are actually far ahead of most sectors in the ability to recover from whatever those incidents may be. So that mesh point for all of us is critical, and I think some of the services DHS provides, some of the work we're doing with local election officials is really geared towards identifying that mesh point for you all. What really does matter? Having us come in and do this facilities audit will help identify those things that really matter from an access control standpoint and physical security standpoint, and how to mitigate some of the risks that exist there. But there's no such thing as risk-free in this environment. So a little bit about DHS and the designation of critical infrastructure. January 6, 2017, elections were declared critical infrastructure by then Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson. And the designation is broad. It's not just IT systems, it's physical security, it's polling places, whatnot. And the reason for that was to be able to provide the broadest scope of support to state and local officials as we could. So what it doesn't mean is that we will be assessing or showing up at polling places and telling you what's wrong, or flashing windbreakers to tell you how insecure you are. It is a voluntary engagement where, as state and local officials want to engage with us, we're able to come in and dedicate resources and prioritize election systems in providing these services. So a couple of the benefits of critical infrastructure, or impacts, we'll say, of critical infrastructure. One is the obvious recognition of the importance of these systems, but bullet number 2 is really the key point for you all, and that's the prioritization of services and support to election officials. I can tell you, having been at DHS now for just over a month, that election systems themselves are being prioritized over even the other areas of critical infrastructure. So for instance, election officials, first at the state level and now working through a process to get some into the local level, are being prioritized for things like security clearances, so that classified information can be shared. The services providing these on-site assessments, election officials are jumping over many of the other areas of critical infrastructure to ensure that we provide these prior to November, and so that there isn't a backlog and election officials are able to receive what they need from us. The other benefit of this is we're able to work with the private sector, so your voting system manufacturers, voter reg support, e-poll book providers, even the Associated Press, who of course has stringers and election night reporting on election night, to prioritize their system security. And so we're fully engaged with the private sector as well to help them identify and mitigate risk as they engage with us as well. And then the final bullet is the ability to communicate and kind of speak to the global community the importance of election systems, that we view these as critical, and that attacking these systems violates international norms that we've established across the globe. To do this, we're using a whole-of-nation approach. Often you'll hear it talked about a whole-of-government, but honestly, this can't just be addressed at the federal, state, and local level. This has to be a coordinated response from the private sector, from academia, from state and local governments, as well as federal agencies, because this engagement, the scope and nature of the risks is too broad to just try to tackle this sort of within a governmental sphere. And so we're engaged with folks like the Harvard Belfer Center, the Center for Internet Security, as well as organizations that support local election officials and federal agencies in order to support all of this. There's two ways or two groups that we engage through. One is a government coordinating council, and one is a sector coordinating council. So the government coordinating council is all state, local, and federal government officials. And then the sector coordinating council is your private sector. And these are self-governing groups that work with the department to say, here's what our priorities are, here's where we believe our biggest risks lie, what support can you provide to us?
Excuse me, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Have any of these sector councils told you that ransomware is a bigger problem than other types of attacks?
Yeah, so really good question. We have not seen in the election sector a prioritization of ransomware or a targeted kind of ransomware attack against election systems. But we have seen in other sectors that governments are being, so we have a state, local, tribal, and territorial sector that have seen an increase in ransomware, and there's actually some really good public data about this. So we actually put out, through our information sharing vehicle that I'll talk about in a minute, some ransomware products about how to prepare, defend against, and also recover from ransomware attacks. And so to the extent that we see it in other sectors, particularly governmental sectors, we want to get out in front of that in the election sector, right, and provide that kind of information. So we put a product out not too long ago focused on ransomware for just the governmental sector. Because the nice part is there's nothing unique about election IT systems when it comes to things like ransomware that those techniques won't work, whether you're talking elections or the court system or whatever, protecting county infrastructure in that way. And so there is some ransomware information that we've already provided and will continue to provide. And that's a good, when I get to the information sharing, I'll try to touch on that too. That ability to share cross-sector information that way is critical to helping you all kind of buy down risk within the sector. And we get to provide that across other sectors. So if the election sector starts seeing targeting or specific attacks, that will feed into the other sectors as well, which is great. This is the private sector. Oh, the GCC real quick. Is made up almost exclusively of election officials. So 27 total members, 24 of which are either a Secretary of State, a state election director, or a local election official. And that is unique within the Department of Homeland Security critical infrastructure sectors. Normally it's made up primarily of federal officials with some state depending on the engagement, or mostly private sector. And so that was done obviously deliberately so that the election officials have the overwhelming voice within the sector. It's not the Department of Homeland Security saying how things should be done, but instead listening to election officials. Within the GCC, not just state, local election officials, but the Election Assistance Commission is fully engaged. Both commissioners that are there now are members of the GCC. The chairman of the Election Assistance Commission sits on the executive committee, and they are the federal agency tasked with working with state and local officials. The Department of Homeland Security, has this new role, but EAC is that conduit. It's how we learn about elections. It's how we engage with election officials in many ways, and so they're vital to the work that we're doing. And I think it's really important to recognize their role in this as well, especially coming from the EAC.
And for that, Maryland's Linda Lamone is on the government.
Correct. Yes, Linda Lamone is on the Government Coordinating Council with us. The subsector is the private sector, again made up of all the various components of your IT election systems. We try to capture a broad swath of vendors or private sector companies, including like ERIC, which Maryland is a member of. So ERIC's represented in there as well. So we even have nonprofits represented because securing their data is also critically important.
Securing their data, you're supposed to ask questions.
No, you can ask.
Securing their data for collectively or individually?
So helping them as an organization secure their data individually. We don't collect or take any of the systems. We don't have any access to any of the data ourselves. We just provide services to help them secure or take steps to secure their information. Yeah, no, you all still run, control, and own all your own data, and those vendors still run, control, and own all of their data. DHS does not come in and take that data in any way and secure it. Good question. These are just examples of some of the kind of non-governmental entities that we engage with. The Secretaries of State, State Election Directors, Election Center, which is a local election official focused group, are all represented on the GCC. We also are engaged with the Governors Association. Part of the challenge in this sector is that in many states, the Secretaries of State and then the counties own the data and the systems, but they sit on a backbone of either the counties or the state infrastructure, and so making sure that there's communication within the state has been a really unique challenge. You can imagine when you have two statewide elected officials vying for resources and support, it's always interesting. And then the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which I'll touch in a minute. Also represented is IGO, which is the International Association of government officials, which is a local election official body, and DHS is highly engaged with NACO across many sectors. I know that's important to Alisoon, who's been very involved with NACO as well. So we're engaging all of these groups to make sure that we're understanding the full spectrum. Our federal partners, as I mentioned, the Election Assistance Commission, critical, probably our prime federal partner in this, but also the National Institute of Standards and Technology, important here in Gaithersburg. They're working with us now on a cybersecurity framework profile for elections, the Federal Voting Assistance Program, as well as the intelligence agencies. And one of the core things that we're focused on is ensuring that the intelligence agencies are declassifying and sharing information all the way down to the state and local level. That has been a challenge in the past. What good is the intelligence if it's not reaching the system owners and operators to help protect the systems? And so we're organizing a variety of activities and exercises to engage that community to show the value of the intelligence they collect and how it helps protect the systems. So just quickly on the tools and services that we offer, again, it's in the book, but want to highlight a few. All of these are free to you all, and again, you're being prioritized really not just as critical infrastructure, but particularly as elections infrastructure above many of the other areas. So we have cybersecurity advisors and protective security advisors. Our PSA will be one of the folks on site here on Thursday doing the review, but these are in every state. And so we can make sure that you have the contact. You can reach out at those email addresses. They're here to serve you. There are regional field folks. They engage with local officials, government officials all the time, and they are really great customer service reps for us. They do a really good job. A few of the services that we offer, cyber hygiene scanning, risk and vulnerability assessments, as well as phishing campaign assessments. So the cyber hygiene scan is something that I would highlight for local offices in particular. It's a remote scanning of your outward-facing networks. So we have tools that will scan your website and other outward-facing sites and look for known vulnerabilities. And then it provides a weekly report to you all that says, here are vulnerabilities we're finding. It'll classify them high, medium, or low, allow you to address them, and then every week you get that report. So if there are some that you're kind of popping up every week, you'll know, okay, we need to take additional steps to address those. The RVA, or Risk and Vulnerability Assessment, is a 2-week on-site assessment where a DHS team will come in, work with your IT staff to do a full-scale penetration test and assessment of your network security. It's in-depth, it's intense, and it really, for a big county like this, is appropriate. Some of your middle to small counties, they don't have the maturity yet, IT maturity. If we were to show up to do this now, we'd spend 2 weeks just trying to assess what assets they have. It would be a kind of base level assessment. And so we've targeted this at the state level and then for larger counties like Montgomery County if you all are interested. And then the phishing campaign assessment, we will test and assess the maturity of your employees on their susceptibility to phishing attacks. So those emails in which you click on a malicious link or open malicious websites that steal your credentials and give access.
Do you sign up for these and get in line?
You do. You sign up and get in line. I will tell you, and I don't want to spoil the ending here, but the two main ones that we recommend for you all, the cyber hygiene and the phishing campaign, there is no wait. You sign up, you sign the agreements, and kind of go back and forth on what, for instance, on the cyber hygiene, what level of scanning activity you want us to undertake, and then we can get started almost immediately. So there is no waiting list.
So what's the wait for the risk and vulnerability?
Risk and vulnerability assessment is going to be, so you get in line, we can assure you that you'll be done before November. Part of it depends on your own kind of where you are in your schedule as far as elections. So we've had several jurisdictions tell us to wait till after the primary, for instance, because it is invasive. And so the ability to mitigate anything found, you're not going to do within an elections timeline because you may break something that you need, right? So they like to wait until after that's done. And so what I can tell you is we'll get it done before the end of the year if that's something you all are interested in, before November, if that's something you all are interested in. We try to fit it in within your election schedule, recognizing, I mean, realistically, from an election standpoint, the latest you'd want to do it is probably 100 days, maybe 45 days out, but that's pretty darn close to the election, to be honest. Probably 100 days.
What's the assurity that your system can't be hacked?
There's no assurity that any system can't be hacked, but we take, obviously we follow all federal requirements, federal guidelines, and we don't collect or store any of your information. So none of the information that we have about your system, say from scanning or work that we do with you, is stored with us.
Like the
And that way
assessment
it's all
results, who gets them?
Correct. That's all turned over to you all in that way.
Have there been any issues with keeping that confidential? Because I'm sure hackers would love to know where you found was vulnerable.
Sure. So there have not. There's protections as part of being part of critical infrastructure, or there are protections in place for that information not to be released, at least from a federal government public records standpoint. I can't speak specifically to both Maryland and Montgomery County records, but we work with counties and states all the time on that sort of thing to understand the best way to communicate with you all on that, so that we're not trying to hurt your security in doing this. Right? We're mindful of that.
Matt, is there a cost for this?
It's free.
All of it?
Yes.
And what is it that you're doing on Thursday?
Physical.
The physical assessment. So we'll come on site and do a sweep, and I don't know how big of a scope you all selected, but a sweep of whatever area physical, looking for access points, risks.
You mean
that
like
may
the
exist.
doors and the windows, are you talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yes. Everything from doors and windows to even bug sweeps. So, are there listening devices or whatnot in the area? So it's pretty thorough.
Jim, that's what you've been talking about.
Yeah, they're doing it Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
And that's
Yeah.
free, and our physical security advisors help organize and conduct that. We also do some reviews. So a cyber resilience review is one I highlight for you. It's a one-day on-site where we're not coming in and trying to penetrate any systems or assess in that way, but really sitting down with your IT team specifically and assessing your level of resilience. So looking at things like policies and procedures as well as network architecture and saying how resilient are you now, what additional steps could you take based on what we're seeing with your networks and your policies that are in place. And so that's something that several counties have opted to take advantage of as a starting point on where they can begin to assess their own risk moving forward. We can skip that one. Let's see. We do offer incident response, and I do want to highlight that too. So God forbid if Montgomery County were to experience some sort of cyber incident, we'd encourage you all to contact us as part of your incident response plan. So you should have a plan in place. If we have a cyber incident, how do we respond? And we hope that part of that response will include contacting us, and we can provide on-site incident response. So begin to work with your IT team to understand the scope and nature, depth of whatever the incident may be, mitigate the issues, and provide you some pretty in-depth services as far as responding to the incident. And so the number one lesson point on that is, if you don't already have an incident response plan, get one, and in doing so, lay out the steps you'll take if you were to have an incident. And those steps should include not just technical response, but communications plans as well. What will you want to say to the public, and how will you communicate it as you move forward to understand what the scope and nature of the response is? And we have some resources. EAC has a really good resource on incident response, as well as the Harvard Belfer Center on communications plans for that. Yes, sir.
Nikki Charlson has talked in the past about Maryland was scanned at
Correct.
some point in 2016. Was this process followed at that point, and then DHS's incident response team got involved?
So I can't speak specifically to what Maryland did, in part because I wasn't at DHS at the time to tell you. I can tell you the basics on that scanning were that in the states that saw scanning or were indicated that they had scanning, that was the equivalent of if someone comes by and kind of jiggles your doorknob or kind of checks your window and tries an easy way in and then moves on. And so at least with the exception of Illinois, I've not and am not aware of anything that resulted in a full incident for other states in that way, where there was an actual cyber penetration, a breach, as it were.
So it's only
so-
in that situation
correct.
that you would then expect DHS to get
And I'll tell you how Maryland was notified, but kind of what went on when I get to the information sharing slide, because it's critical. One of the lessons we learned from 2016 that has really improved since then is the ability to share that kind of information to the states and locals on an ongoing basis, as opposed to kind of after the fact saying, hey, there's this activity in here, so I'll walk you through kind of how that happened. Actually, it's here. So the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center it's a mouthful one, but it is the place where information for state, local, tribal, and territorial cybersecurity infrastructure is shared. It's a nonprofit that's funded by the Department of Homeland Security.
But it's separate? It's a separate?
It's separate. It's a separate
private firm?
Correct. It's run by the Center for Internet Security. It's funded on a cooperative agreement by DHS to provide information sharing services to state and local governments. And so it's free, membership is free, and we actually now have a specific elections sector for this. So the EISAC, the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So ISACs, Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, are common in all the areas of critical infrastructure. So there's a financial sector ISAC that is run by the banks and funded well, as you might imagine. There's ISACs for the electrical sector, all of that. So there's now an ISAC for the election sector. We have almost 600 members now that are all state or local governments and the elections offices specifically. The idea.
Who funds them?
We do.
For elections?
We do. The Department of Homeland Security funds them.
Can outside people join? Can a private business join?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So it's geared only towards. So let me correct that. No, with the exception of.
Of course.
Yes. Those system providers that are supporting elections. So the ISAC, the governance body that is running the ISAC, that's made up of state and local officials, made the decision that private sector vendors, so voting system vendors, voter reg system vendors who support election officials would benefit from the information being shared as well because of the close nature of collaboration that election officials and their vendors have. So if an election official has indicators of threat indicators, it would also benefit the voting system vendors or the voter registration vendors or e-poll book vendors to have that same information made available to them.
Who decides who gets the information? If we have a problem in Montgomery County and you all notify us.
So yes, so that's different in this small way. That's an incident response. So if you have an incident in Montgomery County, okay, and you engage with us to respond, all of that information regarding the incident belongs to you. We do not release that, but what we will do is take the general threat information. So if I'll give you an example of specific IP addresses associated with that, we will share that information, but we won't say, hey, we're getting this information from Montgomery County who had an incident. We'll simply say, hey, system owner and operators across elections, be aware of this IP address or this, whatever it may be, and check your systems to see if you've seen this same IP address either in your system or attacking your system. And that's exactly what happened in 2016, is as we got visibility through the MSISAC to specific indicators, IP addresses and others, DHS pushed out alerts to election officials, starting with the states and then down to the counties, saying, look for these things on your systems and let us know. And so part of the way that we knew states like Maryland were one of the 21 states scanned is the states worked with us through the MSISAC to say, oh yeah, we see that indicator attempted but was not able to get in. And so that's how that information was shared to say, hey, they jiggled the doorknob but they weren't able to access it. And that's how they were alerted. And again, it's all there's no outing of anyone if you have an incident. That's up to the system owners and operators, and that needs to be part of your incident response plan. If something happens, how do you plan to respond? If you make it public, how do you plan on talking about it? Things like that. That's all part of an incident response plan, and not part of DHS's role to say, hey, Montgomery County's had an incident. That's up to you all. Or even, hey, some private sector vendors had an incident. That's up to them. And it's typical for us in a variety of sectors. We don't. If a bank suffers an incident, we don't run out and say, "Hey, this bank suffered this incident." Right? That's up to them to disclose. And people choose to handle that in a variety of ways. Twitter's a really good example, actually. Does anyone have? I know you have Twitter. Twitter just pushed a notification out less than a month ago that to all of its users to change their password, that they had misconfigured something, and there was a possibility that all the passwords had been exposed. And so that was them responding to a possible incident that they took a proactive step to alert their users. So just having that plan in place is, to me, one of the most important things that could be done. So the MSISAC or EISAC now, the Election Information Sharing Analysis Center, totally free. If you sign up to be a member, are you guys members?
Yes.
I should have looked. Okay, so you're good. The EI-ISAC, you get regular information sharing. So it may be specific as far as threat indicators, or it may just be general ransomware product. So the EI-ISAC worked with us, and we pushed out ransomware product about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so, I don't know, you all can say, but it's pretty regular information that flows to your all's inbox to say, hey, here's something you may want to be aware of, or just generally speaking, some elections information. And it's even educational stuff about, like, what is a phishing attack? Let us kind of lay that out. And we've worked very hard with them to gear it towards election officials so that it's not this overwhelming amount of technical information that no one knows what to do with.
So you might have something that happened in Arizona that you want to share, so you describe it in such a way as they don't know that it came from Arizona.
Correct.
But you're saying this is something you want to look at.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
At what point, when you have private users, ESNS, let's just take that, that have information that they've been breached in some way, at what point is it a matter of ethics as to whether or not we know that if it affects us?
Sure. So that's a corporate ethics question more than anything else, right? In that I would encourage you, as part of your contracts with your vendors and whatnot, to ensure that there's that kind of information sharing happening with your private sector partners, whoever they may be, whatever the provider may be. We cannot force them to disclose to you whether or not there was an incident within their company or not, because as you might imagine, if that were something we were trying to leverage, we'd never get any information from anybody, right? But there, across many sectors, part of the contractual agreement includes disclosure in some way. And so ensuring that you've leveraged that from a contractual basis to ensure that. I will tell you that the private sector vendors that we're engaged with now have been fantastic partners. They are very open and see the need for this information sharing. They have not balked and stepped away and said, no thank you. They have leaned forward on it and said, we understand the importance of this, and have been working with us very, very well. So you're right to be concerned about that, and I would address it either contractually or whatnot. It should be part of RFPs as you go out to bid for things. But I've been very pleased with the election sector's response, both from the election official side and otherwise. It's a hard thing. So the three things I recommend for any local election office, you've already done one, which is joining the EI-ISAC. Again, it's free, gives you free information. There's very little reason not to. It cannot do anything but help you with the information sharing. 2 is to engage in cyber hygiene scanning. Again, it's free, you get weekly reports, and it will improve your overall risk mitigation posture within the office to begin to address some of the known things out there, the most common vulnerabilities. And the reality is, for most malicious actors, if they encounter what's called a hardened target, so something that's got layers of security in place, they'll move on to the next one. They're not going to spend a lot of time on the places that are hard to break into when next door might be something that's a little bit easier. So the more hardened you are, the more steps you've taken to secure your systems, the better off you'll be, because in the end, in many cases, they move on to the next. If you look at the most common attacks, ransomware being a really good example, most ransomware attacks come about because either someone was phished, so someone clicked on a link. The human element is always the least secure, right, no matter how much training you do. Or 2, they just found a really simple way in, something that everyone already knows about. Either you didn't patch your systems in time, or you misconfigured a database. A known misconfiguration leads to the most typical exploits. Most cyber criminals or malicious actors move on if someone's really well configured and put together. And then phishing campaign assessment, again, ensuring that you've secured the human, educated your folks, and we tailor those over a 10-week period. There's 6 sets of emails, and we'll work with you. If you think there's a particular message that would hit your folks the hardest or make them most likely to click, we can tailor that. I frequently joke with our guys that do the phishing campaign assessments that I would do a cat video. I'm convinced cat videos are the biggest weakness in elections, because who doesn't love clicking on a delightful cat video with a laser making them run around? So we'll tailor it to whatever you think is most appropriate for your folks. And that's how you sign up. You simply just email nkitcustomerservice@hq.dhs.gov, and that, again, is in those booklets.
And we belong to all of that?
Yes, well, we belong to the MSAC, but we are working with the Department of Technology Services because our entire information infrastructure is part of Montgomery County. And Montgomery County has already engaged a company to harden their DTS system. So we are working with Keith Young, who is our security person in the Department of Technology Services, to
The county department.
Yes.
And is this,
And the state, of course, has their systems, and they are communicating between the State Board of Elections as well. And I pass all of our information, besides to Janet, to Keith Young.
And I'll say just quickly, you made a really good point. These are all free and voluntary, right? You can use them or not. And just because someone is or isn't using them doesn't mean that, one, they're insecure or they are secure. So if you use our services, it doesn't guarantee security. If you don't use it, it doesn't mean you're not taking a bunch of steps. Using a private sector vendor being a really common one. Lots of folks have engaged county IT support or National Guard at the state level, things like that, to do it. So DHS engagement is not an indicator of how secure or insecure you are, but they are available.
does this, if we joined your 3 items, would it give us more than Margaret's already getting?
I don't know, because I don't know exactly what the county's doing. And so the county may be doing already all of these things plus 10 things, for all I know.
Okay. If a voting booth is hacked, what do they get? And can they change the vote? Is it just seeing the vote, or can they literally change a vote?
So that would depend entirely on what's happened, right? But the ability to access a voting system is difficult, if not incredibly difficult, because of the typical approach of air gapping, isolating the systems and whatnot. But again, that all goes to how you've configured your systems, your approach to setting them up, whatnot. We have seen no evidence that suggests that any votes have been changed.
And how are the election officials picked that you have? Your 26 election officials?
Yeah, so the 24 election officials on the GCC are selected by the National Association of Secretaries of State leadership, the National Association of State Election Directors leadership, the leadership within the Election Center, which is a local election official group, as well as the International Association of Government Officials, that's another local, and then the EAC Standards Board has representation. The EAC Board of Advisors has representation as well. So we tried to get the broadest group of election officials that we could to engage.
Dave?
Just following up on some of Jackie's points, is there any disadvantage if we are already getting private services somewhere else to also get the services from the federal government? Because I would think that, at least hypothetically, DHS would be more likely to have a broader range of information available to it than the average private sector service.
Yeah, again, that's going to depend on what services are being used, how the county or others are engaging. In many cases, the private sector companies have access to the same or similar information we do, because they're part of information sharing services like we are. So the cybersecurity companies that you typically engaged, we exchange information with regularly so that threats are known across sectors, right? So if they're engaged with private sector entities, they share that general information with us and we share it the other direction. So it's going to depend sort of on how the county finds value and what value. It's an additional, if it's an additional service provided, it can provide value if for no other reason than to reinforce that you're already doing all the things you should be doing.
I mean, part of my concern is that we are kind of a hybrid agency. We're kind of partially state, partially local. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like we're dealing with a contractor that is a county contractor. We probably also are dealing with whatever the state is doing.
Yeah, and
for what it's doing. And to me, it sounds like getting services from DHS might be a way of kind of having a standard that we're adhering to.
It could, I can tell you that the state of Maryland has been highly engaged, as was mentioned. They're a part of the GCC. They have been working with us since the get-go, and so they've been a very, very good partner with us as well. And so again, a lot of this comes down to, this is in any IT shop, making good risk-based decisions comes down to knowing what your assets are, knowing what your data is, what's most valuable, and then what your largest vulnerabilities are. And it's very possible that you all, through the county, are already doing all of those things that you can be, and there may be no additional benefit. But I don't know, because I don't know what the county's doing, but some places have chosen belt and suspenders, right, to say, hey, we're already doing these things, but we're interested in engaging DHS as well.
Margaret, do you know if the county's contractor is focused on elections specifically, or is it just for everything the county does?
We have been engaged with the Department of Technology Services to make them well aware of the election-specific issues, and that we have agreed that after the primary election, we would engage the Department of Technology Services with those services that they help us identify, because once again, the information technology structure, the foundation, the infrastructure, is county-owned. So anything that we request to have NHS perform, we have to have the cooperation of the entire Department of Technology Services.
And that's fairly typical, for what it's worth. In most county governments, that's generally the structure and how it works.
Matt, so Thursday you're coming to evaluate the security of our building, which is excellent. What about, do you get involved in the security on election day of polling places?
So there is physical site inspections that we can do, but not on election day. I wouldn't even recommend it on election. Sure. So there are services that we can provide, physical inspection services to polling places that we can provide to help do that. If that's something you're interested in. We've had a couple counties take us up on that. The kind of interesting, not surprising discussion that goes on is one of balancing access and the need for voters with disabilities and others to have full access. And if you really wanted a polling place to be secure, you'd put, for instance, blockades and stuff in front of them or whatever else. Well, that's delightful. It doesn't really help serve the ADA purposes that are necessary for polling places. But yes, that's a service that we've provided before.
My main concern is, the active shooter situation.
Mm-hmm.
And most of our polling places are manned by elderly citizens.
Right.
We've had a dialogue here with the police amongst ourselves, but that's always been my number one concern.
So two things on that is, yes, we can provide some support on physical inspections, but we also have, and actually there will be our kind of newsletter that we put out this month is going to be, and it should be released if not today, tomorrow, and it'll come out through the EI-ISAC, which you're already a member of. Is going to be focused on physical security, and we have a number of resources on ways to approach active shooter in particular, and securing places from active shooter. Just making sure you have things like open line of sight, or your back isn't to the door, noticing suspicious behavior, which again is a really tough thing in a polling place, because you don't want to disenfranchise anyone by questioning them, right? And so that balance within the elections process is tougher than in many other, if you're trying to secure the mall, a shopping mall versus a polling place, that's different, because you want people to feel welcome and able to come in and vote.
Is that something we're going to get, Allison, on that information about the polling place?
Yeah, you'll get it through the EII.
We have been working with the Montgomery County Police as requested.
Right.
Maybe we could get these newsletters forwarded to us.
Or at least the one about the active shooter.
Sure.
Yeah, just to
come out?
see what their suggestions are.
It would be interesting.
Yeah, just to see what your suggestions are would be helpful. So our contact then is with the county as opposed to directly with Homeland Security?
Yes, because
but
the
there's no
county, it owns the
I understand.
information infrastructure. So we have to work
I
with
understand.
the county.
But as far as their alert systems that he was talking about, there's no reason we can't get that.
We've been getting that
You've been
for a long time. So when they send out information that there's an IP address, we've been sending that to Keith Young, who's the Montgomery County cybersecurity person, and they follow up on it.
The committee that Linda is serving on as an election director, is there anyone specifically versed in the security issues from the state board staff that works with you all?
Yeah, so the state board specifically can designate and has, we've had folks engaged as we break out into specific working groups. So we have working groups dealing with a variety of communications working group or a NIST cybersecurity framework working group. And so Linda has the ability, if she wants to designate specific personnel to serve on those working groups or not. But the most important point is all of that information that's shared out of the GCC doesn't just go to those participants. So it wouldn't just go to the state board and her employees, but can go out to the larger community via both the EI ISAC, which you're already a member of, but also down through the EAC Standards Board, through all the groups that are involved. So the goal is to distribute it not just through the GCC members, obviously, but out across the entire sector. We want to impact the whole sector as we put out information and share it.
Well, Matt, thank you very much.
No, I appreciate
Very
your all's
helpful.
patience with me getting
Very
here.
helpful.
I hate being late more than anything in the world, so it kind of killed me to be sitting on the Beltway. I'll leave my card if you all need anything. I want to thank you for having me very much, and let me know if there's anything else we can do.
Matt,
and
thank you
appreciate
for-
it. No, thank you.
Very informative.
Very, very. This is what we've been wanting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think we finished voter registration, did we?
Right. State Board of Elections. Vacancy in the candidacy of governor's race. I had Linda call Kevin directly. I believe and I also believe that he spoke with Deputy Attorney General Andre Franco.
Yes. So, I mean, the state they have not finalized what their plan is going to be, but they're working on figuring out what would be the most reasonable way to provide notice to voters as to the change that, in terms of how people are going to be able to vote. They didn't get into the specifics with me, but they said that they hope to have something prepared and ready shortly. And that they would be disseminating it to the local boards.
What did they do when Byron Goodloe died? Am I the only one that knows about
No.
I remember Goodloe Byron.
I don't remember that. The last time this
I think
came
it was
up
after
was
the
with
election.
Tom Perez. When Tom Perez ran to be the
Attorney
Attorney
General.
And then he
General.
was disqualified.
And he was disqualified, and it was too late to reprogram the machines. And on each touch screen, there was a note put on there that said that the Court of Appeals has determined that Mr. Perez is not eligible to serve as the Attorney General.
But we don't have touch screens now.
We don't have
That's
touch
right.
screens, and then this is a little different. So that was an easier fix than this.
Is there a statutory provision that actually governs what happens if someone were to fill in a ballot with candidate's name on it and how that's counted?
No.
You would not be able to count that ballot.
The whole
Because
ballot or that piece of it?
That, if you start writing on the ballot, because there's no write-in in the primary election.
Right.
So you would not be able to.
Because I'm assuming that some of the ballots, is it too late to reprint them, or
Oh, yeah.
yeah? So there's
Now,
candidate's name is going to be on there. So
On what basis do they say it's too late? How
Well,
long?
it's too late to print because, number one, there's not enough paper in the state to reprint the Democratic ballots. Secondly, if we were to try to redo the ballots, we would have to begin from the top, which means we would have to proof every ballot style in every county And then, as I said before, there's not enough paper to print the ballots. And then the next thing that would have to be done is all of the equipment that has been prepared would all have to be redone. So all of the early voting equipment, we have at least 50% of the DS200s completed, would all have to be pulled back out. Ballots would have to be removed. We would have to zero out the memory sticks and reburn all of the cards all over again, and we just don't have enough time.
So what have they decided to do?
Well, they're going to provide notice of the change, and I don't know what the ultimate decision is on how they're going to allow people to vote for Valerie Irvin, but they're going to have to come up with some mechanism by which.
Because Margaret, you said there's no write-in in a primary?
Correct.
No.
So, yeah.
A more pressing issue in my mind with this, because I don't know how long we're going to be waiting for this notice, but when are the sample ballots being mailed?
Sample ballots, the nonpartisan Republican and half of the Democratic sample ballots have been delivered to the post office, and so they'll be out for delivery this week.
Well, can we stop the Democratic sample ballots? Can we hold that until we see what this notice is so we can somehow duplicate it on those?
The answer that the state said was no.
What do you mean the state said no?
So Margaret proposed that we include in the sample ballot to go refer to the website to get additional information, which I thought was a good idea. But the state, when Margaret raised the issue with the state's position is that a lot of the counties have already issued their sample ballots. They want it to be uniform in each county throughout the state, and they would
It already isn't uniform. If some have already delivered and we haven't, it's already not uniform.
Were those delivered before he passed away?
Somewhere.
I'm not sure.
I mean, because obviously that's a different situation too. I mean,
well,
you know,
the state's position was that they did not want that information included in the sample ballot.
wow.
Well, if they're putting notice of some sort that's going to appear on the ballot, it certainly should appear on the sample ballots. That's the whole purpose of the sample ballots. I mean, in addition.
There won't be a notice on the ballot.
Right.
Pardon me?
There will be no notice on the ballot.
Well, what is this notice that Linda was talking about?
This notice will be affixed to the voting booth or in the express vote voting booth. It will be just what we did with Tom Perez was 8.5 by 11. Top statement was in English, bottom statement was in Spanish, that advised the voter that a vote for Tom Perez would not be tabulated because he was.
How do they propose? I understand saying Mr. whatever died. Ignore that on the ballot or appropriate words. But how do they say, but you can vote for these people without it looking like an endorsement?
Jackie, they have not specifically said how they're going to do it. They have said, though, that they are working on what they believe is reasonable notice and how they're going to try and address, this change in the ballot, which obviously the ballot can't be reproduced at this point.
Now, as Alan pointed out to us by email, the COMAR provision gives the local board the responsibility for determining this subject to consultation and approval of the state administrator. And it sounds like from what you're describing that we're being dictated to as to what the options are that we can do, because the COMAR notice specifically, it says that it shall include prominent notices posted in the affected polling places, which would be the entire state. But then it says it also may include television, radio, and newspaper announcements and advertisements, information in the specimen ballot, which is the sample ballot, and postings on the internet. does that mean that we are subject to the state's authority before we post on the internet information that we want to post relative to this question? Same with advertisements, same with free media. I mean, I would think, this is going to be a question that we're going to get from, we're already getting from a lot of people. And the idea that that we're being constrained, the fact that it was done a certain way in the past for a different circumstance at a different time, I don't even know if this COMAR provision existed then, shouldn't be the determining factor for what happens now.
And in addition, my concern is, and I shouldn't be concerned because it doesn't concern me, but the what we do about, is her name Valerie?
Yeah.
Irvin.
Who's now running for governor.
Right.
That if there's no write-in spots,
What does she do?
Then there's no way to vote for her.
There's no there doesn't appear to be a way to vote for her.
Well,
One of my concerns on the internet is this. I wanted to see how did the county board website and the state board website deal with this, and I was jumping about 3 jumps from the county website to the state website before I could find out that it was the Irvin Johnson ticket in place of the Kavanaugh's Irvin ticket. And it would seem that we should take the lead in Montgomery County and be upfront about it and say that this is the ticket. These are the choices.
Right.
We can do it. You don't have to highlight Valerie Irvin. See, just as a reminder, here are the choices. You've got the alphabetical listing. Irvin fits in here. These are the choices you now have.
Right. Part of the problem is that we don't know what to tell them to do if they want to vote for those choices.
Yeah.
Well, that's the issue, which is my suggestion would be, the state's going to have to make a decision pretty quickly.
Yeah.
This is not something they're going to be able to wait a week, 2 weeks to go ahead and figure out. As soon as they have provided whatever notice they believe is appropriate throughout the state, then that should be prominently displayed on the front of Montgomery County's website with how the ballot is, not highlighting any one particular candidate, but providing the notice and how one would vote for someone in the Democratic gubernatorial race.
Okay, but how do they determine to us what the reasonable steps are for notifying voters when COMAR very explicitly gives that to us? It also says take all reasonable steps to notify voters of the change, and then it lists a number of them, which it would be hard to imagine that if we were to choose to do something that's listed in the regulation that they would declare that not to be reasonable.
Because 2201 of the election law says each local board and staff is subject to the direction and authority of the state board and is accountable to the state board for its actions in all matters regarding the implementation of the election law.
So you're saying,
and the COMAR provision, which cannot supersede the election law article, also, as it relates to the sample ballot, says that the local board has to, in consultation with the state board,
right, and consultation and approval, right.
But ultimately, under 2201, the state board has the authority to dictate to local boards how they want things done in terms of the election procedures.
Is there discussion about what it would cost the state or the county to reproduce ballots if Valerie even went to court and got an injunction? So you got to do this?
Well, if Valerie Irvin wants to go to court, I assume she'll go to Annapolis. She'll sue the State Board of Elections. The State Board of Elections will either prevail on that or not.
Did they take it as an emergency and take it immediately because of the time frame here?
What, the court? Oh yeah, they'll take it immediately. If she walked into court tomorrow, they'd make a decision.
Yeah.
But they have to go to Annapolis because that's, by the statute, that's where the State Board of Elections is subject to sue. And, they could be expedited, but, I'm not an expert at it. The state says it's impossible for them to reprint the ballot.
Have they given any details? Because the public is going to want that.
Yeah, I agree.
What I was told today is that they had, in consultation with some of the local boards, conferred about what the process would be, about whether it would be feasible to reprint the ballots and implement this.
Can we back up for a second? You said some of the local boards, and I thought that they were trying to tell us that we have to have a statewide system. Were we one of them?
Did Linda reach out to you?
I'm sorry.
About the implementation, if the ballot was to be reprinted, what would need to be done?
Just what I just described.
No, but did she ask you?
Yes. She asked me exactly what would need to be redone if we had to start all over again.
But didn't she ask all the jurisdictions?
No, she asked-
Every
yeah,
jurisdiction
every
was required to
jurisdiction
fill
was
out a
required.
form, so it's not just
Okay.
Margaret.
Right.
When I was on the phone today, they said some. Now, maybe they reached out to all. I don't know.
But they made it clear it's a statewide decision.
Well, they made it very clear that what Margaret had proposed, they were not going to authorize. They were not going to authorize language to be included on the sample ballot that would reference going to the website as a result of Mr. Camden's death.
But what about language on the ballot after a decision is made as to how votes can be cast? That would say, if you are voting for the Irvin Johnson ticket, here's what you do.
Well, I would assume that they're working through that right now because Valerie Irvin is entitled to be a candidate, and there has to be some mechanism by which someone can vote for her if they choose to.
Well, under the law, she's entitled to get the ballot reprinted. I mean, at least that's what the statute says.
I didn't write the statute. This is the same thing I've said for a long time. These deadlines are not realistic. They're not realistic. No one sits back and sits down with a diligent eye and says, with all these changes in the election process, are all these deadlines feasible? And this is one of those situations where, who would have thought this would have happened? Not very likely. But then it happens, and here we are.
Yeah.
And the statute is not in keeping with what is required to prepare for
What
the
is
election.
realistic?
But if that's the case, it becomes even more important to provide as much information as possible to explain that, because of course the average person isn't going to know any of it. But then the next level is going to be the person who finds the statute and sees, basically they'll be willing to jump to conclusions as to why she's not being allowed to be put on the ballot. And so if there's an explanation for why it's not doable.
David, do you have a thought of how to do it? I mean, I think we understand the problem. Do you have a thought of how to solve it?
Well, for starters, if there's not enough paper in the state of Maryland, we can import paper. I mean, paper is made all over the country.
Not this type of paper.
This type of paper is only made in the state of Maryland?
No, I'm not saying it's only made in the state of Maryland. I believe that there was an effort made to try to find enough paper to print, to turn it around so that there is paper available for the state of Maryland. There's just not enough time to get it here, to get the new ballot proofed, printed, and deployed in time for the June 14th early voting and June 26th election. That is the problem.
Okay, I guess, Jackie, the answer to your question as to what my suggestion is that we ask the state board to either reprint the ballots or provide a detailed explanation as to why it's not possible, so that the public will understand the details here, just like just now.
So as they walk in, they get their ballot and they get another sheet of paper that's laying there that they hand them.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying you hand them a piece of paper about the process, but they have to put the word out about why they're doing what they're doing. So far, the only thing that's been in the media has been, if a court orders us to do it, we'll do it. Well, yeah, if a court orders us to do it, we will do it. That's exactly the way the system works. But there hasn't been anything out there that explains in detail. There's been these private conversations that we weren't even part of. But there hasn't been anything out there that I've seen articles that kind of touch on different possible explanations.
So, to summarize, you're suggesting that we ask the state to put out a press release with ongoing of what's happened and then more later kind of thing at the bottom.
Jackie, it's not our place. This is a statewide issue. We have 23 jurisdictions. If Montgomery County goes off rogue or goes off, we have 23 jurisdictions.
We're asking the state to put out a press release.
I know Linda's working on it. Dave McManus, they're working 24/7. The state to resolve this. I mean, we can't go out and take the leadership on this? It's a state issue.
I'm not suggesting we do, Jim. You didn't hear what I said.
I did hear what you said.
And I'm trying to answer David's question about what to do.
Believe me, nobody's happy with this.
You asked me what I would do, and that's what I would do. It may very well be that the state is working on it very hard, and it may very well be that they're thinking of everything that we're thinking of, but they're not communicating with us enough for us to know that they are.
We would not be helpful if we start making suggestions and going public. We would not be helpful. It would be disruptive, in my view.
Can I just get back to the issue of the sample ballot, though?
Sure.
Because it sounds like when they resolve this, Jim, and they come up with, what they're going to say or how someone's going to be able to vote for Valerie, they're going to put this online. They're going to, have it so that people can access it. And it would, the original language, not knowing anything that you guys came up with to say, go to www whatever, for information on this, at least would be sending people in the direction to find that information when they're looking at the Democratic sample ballot.
The flag.
I would like to request, and I don't think that needs permission from the state, that we hold the Democratic sample ballots from the mail at this point, just to see. They're going to resolve this in a day or two.
200,000 ballots are already the sample ballot. Half of the Democratic sample ballot is at the U.S. Postal Service.
But it's not in the mail.
It's in Shady Grove. It's in the mail stream. It's gone.
Didn't Linda tell you?
Linda did tell me that it was not to be inserted on the sample ballot.
I thought nothing was going until tomorrow, Tuesday. Didn't we get an email to that effect?
Those are absentees that they're holding. They're holding the polling of absentee ballots.
They're holding absentees. But we've already heard that all kinds of absentees are out.
Overseas the military.
But no, domestic. She said domestic's gone out.
Yes, but that email that Margaret read was a late breaking this afternoon that the state's not going to do any more absentee polls until a explanatory statement is developed to be sent with the ballots.
So why are we sending a sample ballot out if they're not sending absentee ballots out? They're obviously thinking that waiting makes more sense than sending it out. I mean, I thought that we were told that the ballots were not going out yet. Like you said, I thought that was not the case. I don't understand why we aren't waiting for this information.
I have a separate question. Half of the Democratic sample ballots you've held so far
to hold it, please.
Are printed and sitting at Shady Grove.
But another half you said have not been given to Shady Grove.
That's correct.
Could somebody call and just say, hold those ballots, please?
But
what would you want us to do with them?
When we find out.
Are we talking about the ballot, or are we talking about the
sample ballot?
The Democratic sample ballots.
The state board administrator directed us not to include anything on the Democratic sample ballot because the state board administrator has stated that the sample ballot needs to be consistent across the state. And so we stripped it out.
And do all the sample ballots look like ours? No. With all that information that we have in our...
The actual sample ballot looks exactly the same in all of the jurisdictions.
Ballot face.
You're talking about the ballot itself, but not the publication.
Right.
We could put anything we want in the publication.
We could put it on the
cover.
We
could put a whole new paragraph out there.
But it has to be what they say, the state says.
The state signs off on the sample ballot. They've approved what they've approved. I don't know how we can undo it.
Well, the statement on any sample ballot has to be the same in Hagerstown, Silver Spring, Annapolis.
No, I mean nothing else on our sample ballot's the same.
No, this thing about Kamenetz has to be the same.
Well, that's what they're saying now. But the rest of our sample ballot, for example, we make reference to
if we don't fool with the ballot itself, if we don't put
Right.
anything on the ballot itself, what could prevent us from putting a little notice on there?
Well, it's got to be the same.
And the notice would be in conjunction with what they decide. We're not off on our own toot.
Did they?
Marion, I don't disagree with you. All I'm saying is the state reviews the sample ballot and they refuse to allow this board to go ahead and include language.
Okay,
for
but
that.
did they direct it to go to the post office now, or was that our decision?
That was my decision.
Okay. And when did that happen?
Friday night after Allison worked until 10 o'clock that night, stripping the language out and sent it to the company to begin printing the ballots.
And given that we were meeting today, what exactly was the hurry on Friday night without consulting with us? Because the last thing we were told was it wasn't going out yet. At least that's what I recollect.
I thought so.
Well, the directive was pretty clear from the state board.
So you just said that it wasn't a directive from the state board.
Yes, I did.
No.
Yes, I did.
The directive from the state board to take out the language about candidates, that was what you said was directive. Whether to send the ballots to the post office, that was not a directive, is what you just said. That was your decision.
Yes, that's correct.
And my question is, why wouldn't we be consulted about something like that? Especially given that the regulation literally says that it's our responsibility to decide how to put out this notice subject to their approval. There's a big difference between, they're saying you can't say this, and then our, we might want to go back to them with another suggestion.
Because of time. We need to move the election along. That was my decision.
Well, time in terms of this mailing going out and the election is 5 weeks from now. No. I would like to make a motion that we immediately, as in after we take a vote on this, contact the post office and see if we can hold the sample ballots that are there until we get further notification from the state party as to
the state board
as to what language they're going to use to describe this.
I'll second it.
Do we have any information when they're going to give us this notice?
You just said to me that the next day or two.
No, I didn't say it.
Yes, you did. You just said it. Then you
I
just
think
to
it's
me.
going to be in the next few days.
Oh, it is? Can it be stopped?
And pardon me?
Can it be stopped, the mail? I
The
don't know.
sample ballot, the ones that have been printed and sitting at Shady Grove, no, those cannot be stopped.
So how do you know?
The postmaster.
Once they're in the mail stream, we don't pull them back out.
You haven't in the past. There hasn't been a need. This is an emergency situation. The postmaster could certainly be contacted. Spent many years working for the U.S. Post Office, and put a hold on that at this point.
If they have not been broken up into zips and started the delivery.
Well, all Mary Ann's motion is to contact the post office. I seconded it. I think that it's definitely worthy of contacting them.
It's worth a try.
And I think that it would be well worth it. Otherwise, there's a very good chance we're going to have to send out a second mailing.
Right, but as it stands now, not everyone's going to get the same information because some people may get the ballot if it can't be held back, and other people may get it.
We won't know if we don't ask.
If we don't call and
Right.
find out where it is in the stream of things, that's what I would like
Kevin,
to do.
what's your
And
thought?
this only involves, remember, the Democratic sample ballots. The Republican and independent ones can go forward.
Kevin, what's your thoughts on this?
Have any of the sample ballots for the Democratic sample ballots been sent out?
Yes.
So they.
Some of them have gone.
When you say some of them
I-
are
I
gone,
mean-
I'm sorry.
Gone
They
where?
have gone to the Shady Grove
That's
Okay.
That's right.
location.
When did they go?
Today, Monday.
This is
There's a motion
getting.
on the floor to say,
Yes,
could we make
please.
a telephone call?
Can we make the call where time is of the essence?
Okay.
I don't think we need a motion. I think if we can make the call.
I'd like the motion.
There's a motion on
There's a motion on
We want the
Yes.
motion.
Yeah, please call the question.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I wasn't here, I don't know what was the
I abstain.
Okay.
So it's 3, so it passed.
Allison, go call Frederick.
Yeah, just
Find out what that's
Yeah.
going on.
Which three voted for? Did you catch that?
Yes, I did.
I'm going with the call.
Okay.
You going to report back to us, Mary Ann?
Do we want to?
Well, we're going to recess the meeting then.
No.
What? You
Yeah.
don't need me for the meeting. You've got a quorum.
Alan's here and ready.
What do you say?
I can vote in her absence.
Okay. So, the board attorney, do you have anything to report?
Can't go to closed session. She'll be back with it. Yeah, I think I sent you a letter that I got from Judge Hollander on the Judicial Watch case. The court is looking at the motion to dismiss filed by the state and by Montgomery County. Judge Hollander had a question as to whether there was a change to the statute that is at issue in that case. We have provided Judge Hollander a status report that although there were proposed amendments, none of those amendments passed that would have had any impact on the statutory language that's being challenged by Judicial Watch. So now the court has been informed of that. I assume that Judge Hollander is going to begin reviewing or continue reviewing the motions to dismiss and will be issuing something in the next 60 days or so.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no hearing set. We're just waiting.
No hearing, and I doubt she'll have a hearing. Judge Hollander is not one that normally does, and the issues are not such that I think she would find a hearing to aid the decisional process.
How likely is that decision to come on that time frame?
That's purely a guess.
You can never predict when the
you never can predict. It depends on how busy her work schedule is, what other cases she has.
Right.
I expect that the opinion will be very fulsome.
Long.
Somewhere between 30 and 80 pages.
She's known for writing very lengthy
I know.
things.
It once got a 90-page.
So, that's my guess, only because she's turned her attention to it, and she's obviously looking at it. But it could be 6 months, could be a year.
Jim, I'd like, given that this is your report, we've discussed this in the past, I'd like to repeat my request for this board to take a leadership role in putting together a committee of legislators, somebody from the Attorney General's office, and others across the state having to do with elections, to upgrade and simplify and modernize COMAR and the laws about elections in Maryland. Thank you.
Okay. Going on to old business. I have no old business. And if you want to go on to primary election preparation, the first thing I have is Roberto Zelaya. Roberto?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we're actively in the community. We're winding down with outreach efforts in the county. It's been extremely fruitful. The community has been very responsive. And we're looking for the onset of early voting and election day implementation. We have close to 500 events total for this election season. And we're just moving forward, and the majority of our outreach team will serve as either early voting lead center managers or chief judges. So moving forward, we're going to switch their role from outreach and empowerment to election judge early voting implementation.
Vern, what do you mean when you say very responsive? Pick one of these and give me how many people do you pick one of these? How many people do you have? What kind of questions?
So depending. So if it's at for example, we had an African event this weekend. So there's a lot of questions on how to become a citizen, or what does it mean vote by mail? What is actually early voting? If we went to a high school, the focus or the interest was how can I serve as an election judge? How can I serve in future vote? If
Do you
it's
go to specific classes in high school, or do you have a meeting that people come to?
no, so high schools we focus during the lunch hours. So we do the voter registration, election judge recruitment, and so depending on the event is how we tweak our focus. Because, for example, at the high schools, you have 55-minute blitz with the students. We do a lot of promotion before we arrive and over 3 days. And then the focus would be the voter empowerment, getting registered to vote and serving as election judges and or through the Future Vote Initiative. If it's an event, for example, this weekend's African community event, we'll do a lot of promotion through the different organizations coordinating the event. We don't put those events together. We are invited. At times, if we identify an event, say with the Department of Recreation, we will contact them to see if we could have a table and a presence there. And if needed, for example, we're doing a push to help with election judge recruitment, so we contacted the libraries.
So this is the same at the libraries. You put a table up?
Yes. So we'll do a table up. A press advisory was sent out. So depending on the event, on the focus, is what we target our message. But when we go to the events, we have everything from vote by mail, election judge service, future vote, voter registration, English and Spanish. We also have the voter registration, absentee, vote by mail application, and the early voting information flyer in Braille in English and Spanish as well. So whether the focus is, for example, election judge or demonstrating the equipment, we still bring the whole kit and caboodle to the events in case we have someone asking for a specific question that has nothing to do maybe with the focus of the event.
What's Gapbuster?
Gapbuster is an organization through LULAC, and actually it's interesting. This has been sitting in my office for a while. So LULAC is a recognized national organization, the League of American Citizens, and we got recognized last year. And it was with you pass it around. It was with.
Aren't you glad I am?
Nice.
I've been looking at it since last year. But part of the efforts when we received the recognition, I made our team accept it because they're the ones in the community outreaching and doing the empowerment. So we got recognized for our efforts as a national organization, and they saw the kind of the effective and the outreach we do in the community. So we got recognized for the outreach we do in Montgomery County.
I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many people rave about your presentations. You know, I've heard from so many people what a great job Roberto does.
But you guys also,
I'd like to add to that, Ray.
I've heard it from elected officials, newspaper people.
Thank you.
You do a great job.
It's a team effort.
Thank you.
So I'll also thank everyone. During the event, also we recognized Margaret and the executives, the administrators, also the board, and also the county council for supporting us through outreach. So it was kind of a group effort. You know, unfortunately, my name appears on here, but you guys did a good job, and so did our outreach.
Your TV star, I see on TV.
No.
Great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really good.
Thank you, Roberto.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, early voting assignments. As always, the media center will be the Silver Spring Civic Center, and Jim will be there with Margie and Roberto doing Spanish.
Are we going to get a list with our names on it? I didn't get one on mine.
What we were going to do is ask you to sign up.
Oh.
So,
is that going around?
I was just going to go through this.
Oh, okay.
Nahid had last month came to me and reminded me to arrange for parking, and she wanted to be at the executive office building. When we were negotiating with St. Catherine's, Mary Ann Keefe assured Father Gary that she would be the board representative. Alex called me last week, I think that was last week, to arrange to talk about his schedule and agreed to return to Mid-County Community Center. And after that, David wrote and said he was interested in the Lawton Community Center. So that leaves Germantown, Praisner, Potomac, Damascus, Gaithersburg, Sandy Spring.
I question about the process. I'm new to this right here. So is the process to call you and say, hey, I'd like to go here? Or how's it go?
You can, or you can
say
send me
right
an
now.
email
Actually,
or say right now.
Gaithersburg or Germantown. Gaithersburg, since Marianne is not going.
Well,
They need a
I
lot
live in
of
Kensington, so it's easy
David.
to be
Yeah,
over by
I was
the
going to
county.
say, what I said was not I said that I was interested in Lawton based on the choices that were available to me. I always thought that this process was not done by advance reservation, or else I could have done it too.
Okay.
But
Is there a particular place that you want that's been taken?
well, yeah. I've been covering Wheaton for some time, and I quite frankly am surprised that a board member can tell a facility, "Don't worry, I'll be here," without the rest of the board. It's really just more in the category of what I've said before. I mean, there basically should be the same rules for all the board members.
Which one do you want decent? St. Catherine?
No,
That's the one
no,
Mary Ann had?
No, I don't want to start a fight.
Okay.
I don't want to start a fight. I would be happy to have Lawton or Potomac, but I realize that Lawton is going to be convenient for both Jackie and Alan. So so I don't know if you guys want to arm wrestle over that or
I will take either one of those, or I'll take any place. I really am the easiest person here about this stuff. Whatever. You all pick what you want, and I'll take what's left over.
I'll take Potomac. It sounds easier for David to get to Lawton from where he works, but I would take it.
Only because I don't know whether I'll be downtown or not that day.
Lawton's in my district, but I knew Jane Lawton. But
yes, you did.
But so I like Jane Lawton Center, but I'll take Potomac.
Let me ask a question.
I'll take Potomac.
Let me ask a question. Is there a reason why, if one of us takes Lawton and one of us takes Potomac, and if we should decide later that for whatever reason that we switched, is that a problem?
Sure. No.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You take Lawton, I'll take
But
Potomac.
we need to know if there's a problem. We need to know.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you-
No, Jackie, you go. Never mind. I don't want to cause a problem with Jackie.
You've already caused a problem with Jackie.
I've
David,
already
it's
got
too
a problem,
late.
David. Never fear.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to cause a problem today.
What do you want, Margaret? Now you've got a list in front of you.
No, I have.
What do you have left?
I don't know who's
Germantown, Praisner, Boar Park, Damascus, Sandy
Spring.
Spring.
Who's going to Lawton?
One of them.
I have David down for that, and I have Alan down for Potomac. But
Well, if they
they're
switch, all they have to do is
switching
notify
So
us.
they're
and-
trying to, yeah.
Okay, so David will
I
be
can
at
do either
Lawton, and
Well, you guys can
Alan
work it out,
will be at Potomac. So you could go to Damascus, Germantown, Praisner, Sandy Spring, the new site.
Sandy Spring, sure.
There you go.
Well, why don't you guys arm wrestle for it now, and Jim will referee, and then we can just decide.
No, they can.
You want us?
They can
Tell
switch.
me again when you want us there.
You need to be there around 9 a.m. On June 14th, and just plan to stay around till about 10:30. Or if you think everything is just running smoothly at 10:05, you can leave. Basically, I just need to have you available.
Don't have to go the
phone.
night before while
No.
they're setting up. Good.
No, we're setting up earlier than that anyway. And then on the closing, you report here at 4 p.m. to do the election supply bag verification.
That's the 21st.
That's the 21st. And then you will proceed.
What time here?
For the election supply bag verification, and then proceed to your early voting site. You don't have to wait until the trucks drive away. You just need to make sure that the poll books are removed and the blue bin with the voted ballots are removed.
We don't have to sign the.
No,
You don't have to do that anymore?
No, you do not have to do that anymore.
Why the change?
Why? Because we have more early voting sites and fewer trucks. So it's going to be a very, very late night. And the state no longer requires it.
So who would be signing the tag when it goes?
The center manager has to stay.
Okay.
Okay, so Jim is at Silver Spring, Nahid is at EOB, Marianne is at St. Catherine's, Alex is at Mid-County, Jackie is at Sandy Spring. We have David right now at Lawton and Alan at Potomac. The only thing that I, as the PIO, would ask is that if you two switch,
We'll let you know.
it's helpful
Yes,
to know, because
absolutely.
then we know who to call
Yep,
if we need
yep,
to get somebody
yep.
there.
We pick the firehouse in Sandy Springs.
Yes,
That's what we find.
yes.
And I will go, if you don't have anybody at Damascus, I'll go from Sandy Springs out there.
No, staff will be covering all the others.
Margaret, Silver Spring has a problem with handicap. I hope it's resolved. No parking space, and they have to go park on the garage and then walk through the traffic, and it's really, really bad. Me and Marianne checked one time.
Did we have, and did we
Stop
have any,
presence.
we block off parking places in Silver Spring?
No,
like we did?
There's spaces at the back. I don't know what the name of that street is.
The
but
loading
there's
dock back
spaces, and
there,
then
you
there's
can
the
get
back.
in.
Right, but it's not assigned as a handicap parking. It's not
Okay.
assigned.
Well, we have bulletins.
There is a letter with regards to the issue that we are going to have at all of these early voting sites, and that is we're going to have an unprecedented number of candidates and their supporters. And so my concern, and we've drafted a letter for the board to consider sending to the candidates, that to ask the candidates and their volunteers not to park and take all the parking spaces away from the voters.
Great.
Our specific issues are Jane Lawton. We would like for the volunteers to consider parking at one of the county parking lots. The executive office building, the volunteers, if they're going to exceed 2 hours, need to plan on parking someplace else. On the activity center at Boer Park, we would like them to park on the north side of the building and allow those individuals that are voting to vote in the front. And the Potomac Community Center, we would like the volunteers to park up at the synagogue or down towards the tennis courts and walk down, what's Marisol? Marisol Street, Marseille Street, to so that parking will be available at Potomac.
Do you want to specify which synagogue that is?
Oh, it's a Cross Falls Road. Is that what we're talking
Yeah.
about?
It's not Washington Hebrew, which is
No,
further away.
it's Har Shalom.
Har Shalom,
Here,
yeah.
here,
So
here.
you should specify Har Shalom.
Yeah.
Additionally, at the St. Catherine's, the agreement would not allow will not allow for yard signs on the grounds of the rectory, nor the grounds of the St. Catherine's Church, nor the playing field, which is directly west of the actual early voting location. And then we also asked, which was a big problem in 2014, that the signs not go into the landscaped flower beds so that the plants are not totally destroyed. So this is a letter that I worked up and Kevin has refined. It's not the end all and be all, but we would like the board's support to send this to the candidates. And I understand that the candidates will only, it's a voluntary.
Would you remind them not to cross, don't come by the polling places? They have to stay where they're supposed to stay?
The electioneering, well, we can try.
Yes, right.
I know.
But that happened before.
I'm well aware they chased me down too.
On St. Catherine's, you would recommend that they enter through Claridge rather than from Veers Mill Road? Be safer that way.
That's the best way, yeah. There's a light there.
Yeah. But
So
you want to recommend
put it in the letter, you're saying?
recommend to volunteers to go in that way?
If you want to make an amendment to the letter, I can send it to you electronically.
You send it to all of us electronically?
Yes, I will.
The Har Shalom has, I assume, approved of our parking in their facilities during early
Chris,
voting?
have you got?
I've been trying to contact her. I'm confident. I trust that we can have the same arrangement that we had last time. The parking lot was large, and we weren't interfering with any of their worship services. So we were allowed to take a corner of the parking lot.
Okay, but I assume we won't send a letter until we get the confirmation.
I'm gonna drive, I literally drive by it. I'm gonna drive. The safer way to do is to park there and then cross Falls Road and walk down Marseille.
Right.
And go off the trail to the community center, so you're not walking down.
Which we probably need to say more explicitly.
We will. I ran out of time this morning.
Understood. And what are we telling early voting judges about parking?
What are we telling them?
Yes.
Park
no,
away from the door.
Right. Well, I guess that's my question: is whether we're asking we're asking the candidates and their people to park far away. Are we asking our judges to do the same?
Oh, we aren't really?
No, because they'll quit.
Oh.
Mary Ann has an announcement, Allison. She has an announcement about the United States Post Office.
I'll let Allison fill in the details. Literally, we turned the truck around.
Wow.
So
yes, that's it. They while we were on the phone with them, they got the truck turned back around. It's going back to the distribution facility.
These were not at the post office yet.
And they'll store it there. Store them there.
So, Mary Ann, I can only say that this has happened with the definite partiality of Almighty God.
So they weren't even at the post office
So
yet.
the Republican, the unaffiliated sample ballots, and the Republican sample ballots, you got a truck full of both Republican styles and Democratic styles, and so the vendors
Trusting
are good.
the driver
I
to
am
read.
trusting in their ability to separate out the Republican ones from the Democratic ones and make sure the Democratic ones don't get intermingled. with
Are we doing different colors like we've done in the past?
No, it's prohibited by Colmar.
Pardon me?
No, it's prohibited by Colmar.
How do they know then to separate?
They know. I have copies of the unaffiliated sample ballot styles here I can pass down. But the bottom right back, you see the ballot style pre-printed.
Are they in batches that are easily identifiable?
They're mixed by zip?
We wouldn't want the Republican ballots to be held up.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you mean by held up, but part of the conversation I was surprised to learn that this vendor who was delivering it, they had just received Prince George's, which is scheduled for mail this weekend. So why our rush to judgment, I don't know.
So is it safer to hold it than or everything as opposed to
Prince George's is not putting anything in their ballot.
No, but is it safer now that they're to hold everything? Otherwise, some Democratic ballots will probably go out, I would think, by mistake.
Our vendor's good on this. I think if he feels that's necessary, he'll do it.
Is the vendor truck this time?
Well, you do what you can do.
Where do you see this is Democratic?
You have to open it, I guess.
Where do you see?
Well, is it ordinarily going to be on the address on the outside?
They were printing.
Because otherwise, you have to look at the ballot.
No, wait a minute.
How do you know if it's a D or an R? You have to go inside the publication? There won't be anything on the outside.
It's probably safer to hold everything.
Yeah, then we better hold it all.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
Alison, what said it's independent?
It used to be blue and pink.
Yeah.
And yellow.
And when did that stop?
I don't know.
Margaret, what is said?
I'd like the Comar site.
Jim?
No, it doesn't say it on the outside.
When the voters came to the polling booth, they're covered.
Margaret, what is said
no
no party belongs? What is said Republican, Democrat, Independent? Nothing?
It doesn't say there.
The cover's not different, it's the back.
In the back?
And of course on the inside of the ballot itself.
Look back there.
Which is what they requested of us.
Not quite.
Oh,
Not quite.
I see that.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Non.
Oh
There.
my gosh.
There it is, non. See?
At the very bottom
It's
of
one
the...
of
I
those
see.
things.
Oh.
You want $100,000, then read the thing underneath.
Yeah.
This is what it said.
right. This is the further terms and conditions apply.
Yeah.
Down here where it says non, that's all there is.
Any actual ballot in
Well, the Teamsters can.
When
do that.
the Teamsters, another one. I worked for the
I know.
Postmaster
Yeah.
General, my first job. When did Comar outlaw the color of our the blue and pink and green we used to do?
2014, after 2014.
Why?
You did not use color in 2016.
I remember that.
The only thing
Were
color
we
we
told
have
about
is
the
that.
change?
Yeah, I remember.
Yes, you were
yeah.
down.
Yeah, we must have.
I didn't, yeah.
I remember it.
Why?
But did they write new language to do
Yes.
that? Just because of us?
No,
Or-
they just got rid of all the, any coloring on the ballot because it created issues.
Other than the flag.
I'm sorry, there were what kind of issues?
That
Creative?
people, no, it was, people did not feel that anybody should know what political party they belonged to.
Oh, I see.
Oh, when they brought their ballot.
Yeah, makes sense.
They actually made it easier for the poll people.
Probably saved a lot of literature.
Alrighty. Okay. Let's
So
move on.
going on further, if you have changes that you want to make to the letter, we'll send it to you electronically. But if you could get it back to us by this Friday, then we could draft it, and then
That'd still be more.
Chris would be able to prepare it to send out to the candidates. So does the board agree to send this letter to notify the candidates of the parking issue?
I move we send the letter to notify candidates of the parking issue.
Second.
Do we need motions for all this? Do we need a
You're all
motion?
in favor of this? I'm trying to keep the
Yeah.
consensus.
Yeah, I think we're all in favor.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. We don't-
Okay, I have a motion on the floor that was seconded.
Let's just vote it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. With regards to the ballot equipment, voting equipment for early voting is completed. Voting equipment for election day is 50% completed. All of the nonpartisan and Republican ballots for early voting and election day have been packed. 10% of the Democratic ballots have been packed. The election judge module, early voting and precinct assignments began this week. On precinct 430, Chris went back to St. Elizabeth's to ask if we would receive permission to return there for the November 6th election. And Chris said that the church said yes. Chris, do you want to add to that?
No, they honestly didn't realize the whole process and assumed always that we would be there in November. They couldn't accommodate us in June, but they were assuming they would do November.
Didn't we get, didn't the mayor and the county council vote?
Yes.
Did everybody get that?
Yes, city council.
City council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move that we approve St. Elizabeth as the polling place for the 4:30 for the general election and request permission from the state board to do that.
Second.
You accept that?
Yes.
To St. Elizabeth?
Second, okay.
Yes.
Any discussion?
So you feel, David, it's appropriate to do that now, and you don't want to wait?
No, I don't want to wait. I want the word to be out so that when people go to the polls for primary day, that they can be informed about where the general election poll is going to be.
Good.
And besides, I mean, I think the state pretty much told us that they would approve it if we put it in front of them. I want to do that before they change their mind.
Any discussion further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous.
So if that works, would there be signs at the at Richard Montgomery that
There'll be a handout.
Okay.
There'll be a handout.
Yes.
What time is the public test?
Yeah, they'll all get.
10?
Public test?
10.
I'd like, okay, so thank you for that information, and we will prepare the letter to go over to the state board. Public test of the equipment is for June 7th at 10 a.m.
What day of the week is that?
Thursday.
Thursday. Who would be able to attend? Jackie?
Probably.
Naheed?
Alan is
I don't
saying
know
he
yet.
can.
Alan? I may, I don't know. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Okay.
You don't need a quorum for that, do you?
No, I do not. No, I do not.
Okay.
What time? June
I'm
7th?
not on that, am I? I
You
may
don't
have,
have to be.
did I? I'm
I
not
don't
going to
think
be
you
here.
were because you didn't expect to be in town.
No, I didn't expect to be in town now, and I thought I'd be there,
So it's
but it's
10
the reverse.
10 a.m. on June 7th?
Yes.
And that's here.
And then the Canvas calendar, I sent that to you electronically, in a PDF format. Lisa is going to send it to you again in an Excel Word document. But what we would like for you to do is to prepare that so that you can give us an idea of when you will be available during the Canvas.
Alan has provided his, so
Okay.
you just
The other
check
thing is that I just on the very first day of the Canvas, June 28th, as always, we will not have the voter multiple status report available probably until 1 o'clock. So what we'll have to do is convene at 10 o'clock and then immediately recess and come back at, I believe, 1:30 is the start time. So we'll have to go through and pull any and all any or all duplicate ballots or ballots that there is a question about. So because of the lateness of that report, so I just wanted you to be aware
So
that
we're going to have to all be here at 10 o'clock on the 28th.
I just need
All
a
have to be here
quorum.
at 10. We didn't
Or
used to all have to be there.
I need to have one person from each political party.
When? At 10?
Thursday at 10, June 28th.
Right.
I thought we got our hands slapped for that,
June
that everybody had to
28th.
be there at the start.
No,
No, you
I
need
have to
a
have
quorum.
quorum.
You need to have a
How
quorum.
about certification?
So,
Just to convene.
so for the 10 o'clock, what exactly
need a
do you
quorum.
need?
You need
Four people to convene.
4 people
Because the
and
statute provides
1
us-
from each party.
Yeah. The
Okay,
statute
I'll-
provides you have to start
With a quorum.
at 10 o'clock
Right.
on the Thursday.
Right.
But we're never ready at 10 o'clock
Right.
on the Thursday because we're just
Right.
getting the
Lisa.
E40 report from the.
So I have Nahid and Alan
For 10 o'clock on the
so far.
on the 28th, I can be there at 10 o'clock on the 28th.
Alan, it's a form that they give you where there's a potential that the person may have voted absentee, provisional, early voting. They're potential double voters.
Yeah.
So you have to hold their absentee ballot
Yeah, I mean,
and then research whether
Yeah,
that's.
I have two.
Reminds me
One
of a
night.
question that somebody posed at dinner last night. Guests were in there. Sue said, "I know where Alice lives in Germantown. I know how old Alice is. What if I go to Germantown and vote in Alice's precinct and say I'm Alice? Alice will come in later on and say, well, I didn't vote. And Alice will vote provisionally. But how do you catch Sue for voting for Alice?"
You deter her.
We can't stop people from committing crimes.
It's difficult to do, but.
Require ID.
It happens every once in a while. We had someone who decided they wanted to vote for their
So
mother.
Alan, you don't really want to have this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. They're signing, I mean, so they're
Yeah.
in violation of the law
Yeah.
if they're doing that, so. And when we find it, we turn those over to the Attorney General's office.
Or the state prosecutor.
Okay, so if you could, again, if that Canvas information could be sent to Lisa so that we are able to provide you with a schedule next month so that you know how much coverage there is and where we have some vacancies and things like that.
I'm sorry, you want this when?
Just if you could get it to us maybe, Lisa, 10 days before the next meeting?
I mean, if you could get it next week, that would be
Yeah.
great. I mean,
When you send it to me, I'll respond.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
form, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then, new business? Okay, future meetings? Really, aside from next month's meeting, the big thing is if you've signed up to be here for the public test, just please show up.
How long will that be?
Hour.
It's about an hour.
We meet
I keep
downstairs?
forgetting. Yeah, we'll go meet downstairs. Is there anything else,
No.
Mr. President?
No, we have we're going to go into executive session. Do we
I
have?
move we adjourn the meeting, go to the executive session, the public meeting.
Is there a
and go
second?
to the-
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No one opposed. So, the public meeting is adjourned.